In a rain-soaked Oregon town, a desperate mother fleeing abuse was about to gamble her last $5 on salvation. What started as a frantic escape with two young daughters took a shocking turn when Selena Turner discovered a rotting shack for sale and $172 million in stolen cash hidden beneath its floorboards. Selena wasn't your typical survivor. For 8 years, she'd endured violence and control, escaping twice before only to be dragged back. When she bought the impossible property, she had no idea she was walking into a decades-old conspiracy that would force her to choose between survival and her soul. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The digital clock on the nightstand read 2:47 a.m. when Selena's eyes snapped open. She hadn't been sleeping, hadn't really slept in weeks, but she'd been pretending, listening to Marcus's breathing downstairs turn thick and heavy with whiskey-induced unconsciousness. This was her window. She moved without sound, years of navigating this house's dangerous geography, guiding her feet around the creaking floorboard near the closet, the loose carpet edge by the door. The backpack waited where she'd hidden it 3 days ago, stuffed behind winter coats Marcus never touched. Inside, 2 changes of clothes for each girl, their birth certificates and social security cards wrapped in a tampon box he'd never think to search, and $127 in cash she'd skimmed from grocery money over 6 months. $1 here, $3 there. The price of their freedom measured in unpurchased vegetables and generic cereal. Maya's room first. 8 years old and already she slept like a sentry. One eye always half open, alert for the sounds that meant danger. When Selena touched her shoulder, Maya didn't startle. She just looked at her mother's face and understood. "We're leaving," Selena whispered, her lips barely moving. "Get dressed. Be quiet." Maya nodded, her dark eyes too knowing for a child. She'd witnessed this twice before. The midnight escapes, the desperate runs, and always Marcus finding them, dragging them back. But she didn't question. She pulled on jeans and a sweater with practiced silence, then helped her mother wake Sophia. 5-year-old Sophia was different. She emerged from sleep confused, ready to ask the 1,000 questions that lived in her imaginative mind. Selena pressed a finger to her daughter's lips. "We're going on an adventure," she whispered, hating the lie, hating more that it worked. Sophia's eyes lit up even in the darkness. They moved like ghosts through the hallway. Selena carried Sophia. Maya clutched the backpack, and each step felt like walking across broken glass. The house they'd learned to fear held its breath around them. Every shadow concealed Marcus's shape. Every silence promised his awakening. The 3rd step from the bottom creaked. Selena had forgotten. Her foot hit the worn wood and it groaned like a living thing. She froze, Sophia's weight solid in her arms, Maya's hand suddenly gripping her shirt. From the living room came the sound of Marcus stirring. A grunt, a shift of weight on the couch. Selena's heart stopped. She counted seconds in the thundering of her pulse. 1, 2, 3, 4. Marcus's breathing settled back into the heavy rhythm of deep sleep. They reached the front door. Selena's hands shook as she turned the deadbolt, praying the click wouldn't wake him. The October night hit them like cold water. Shocking, clarifying. She pulled the door closed behind them with infinite care, then ran. 2 blocks to the bus stop. The pre-dawn streets of Portland were empty except for a homeless man sleeping in a doorway and a fox darting between parked cars. Selena didn't stop running until she saw the bench, the posted schedule, the promise of escape. The first bus arrived at 3:42 a.m. Selena paid cash for 3 tickets east and chose seats at the back where she could watch every passenger who boarded. Sophia fell asleep immediately, her head on Selena's lap, already dreaming of their adventure. Maya stayed awake, her small face pressed to the window, watching Portland disappear into darkness. "Where are we going?" she finally asked. "Somewhere safe," Selena said, the lie tasting like ash. "That's what you said last time." The truth of it cut deeper than any of Marcus's blows ever had. Selena had no answer that wouldn't be another lie, so she pulled Maya close and watched the highway lights blur past. The journey stretched into an eternity of transfers and waiting rooms. Portland to Salem. Salem to Eugene. Eugene to a junction town whose name Selena immediately forgot. She'd chosen their destination by closing her eyes and stabbing a finger at a map in the public library 2 weeks ago. Pine Haven, Oregon. Population 843. A dying lumber town in the Cascade foothills. Far enough from Portland that Marcus might not think to look. Small enough that strangers would be noticed. That last part was a double-edged sword. At every stop, Selena counted her remaining cash. $119, $114, $108. Each transaction chipped away at their survival. Sophia needed snacks. Maya asked for nothing, but Selena bought her a sandwich anyway, watching her daughter eat it with the careful rationing of someone who understood scarcity. "Mama," Sophia asked during their 4th transfer, "why can't we go back home?" "Because we're finding a better home," Selena said. "But I miss my toys. And my bed." "We'll get new toys. A new bed." The promise hung hollow in the bus station's fluorescent light. Selena had $103 left and no plan beyond arriving somewhere Marcus didn't know to look. Maya said nothing, but her hand found Selena's and squeezed. They reached Pine Haven at dusk, after 14 hours of travel that felt like 14 years. The bus deposited them at what passed for a station, a bench outside a closed gas station on what appeared to be the town's main street. Selena stood with her daughters and their single backpack and surveyed their new home. Dying didn't begin to describe it. Boarded storefronts lined both sides of the street like missing teeth in a ruined smile. A general store with flickering lights. A diner with a closed sign that looked permanent. A hardware store. A library. The skeletal remains of prosperity. Picked clean by economic forces Selena didn't fully understand but had always lived beneath. "It looks like a ghost town," Maya said quietly. "It looks like an adventure," Sophia insisted. But even her optimism sounded strained. Rain began to fall. Not the gentle mist of early autumn, but the cold, penetrating drizzle that promised a long, wet winter. Selena spotted a handwritten sign in a window. "Room for rent. Inquire within." The landlord was a woman in her 60s with suspicious eyes and a mouth that turned down at the corners. She looked at Selena's worn clothes, her 2 shivering daughters, and quoted a price that might as well have been $1 million. $800 a month. First and last month's deposit. No pets. No noise. No trouble. Selena had $103. "Thank you for your time," she said, and walked back into the rain. They sat on a bench across from the general store as darkness fell completely. Sophia had finally stopped asking questions and fallen into an exhausted sleep, curled against Selena's side. Maya sat on the other side, her thin arms wrapped around herself, not complaining about the cold but shivering nonetheless. Selena stared at the rain-slicked street and felt the full weight of her failure. She'd escaped Marcus twice before, and twice before he'd found them within weeks. She'd lost jobs, apartments, what few friends she'd had. This time she'd promised herself would be different. This time she'd planned, saved money, chosen a destination so remote he'd never think to look. But $103 didn't buy different. It bought a bench in the rain in a town dying as surely as her hopes. "Excuse me, ma'am?" Selena flinched at the male voice, her arms tightening protectively around her daughters. But the man stepping out of the hardware store was elderly, 70 at least, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and hands that moved slowly, non-threateningly. "I'm Tommy Vega," he said. "Own the hardware store. Couldn't help but notice you and your girls sitting out here in the weather. You folks just arrive in town?" Selena's instinct was to lie, to say they were just passing through, to reveal nothing. But something in his face, maybe the genuine concern, maybe the way he reminded her of her grandfather who died when she was 12, made her tell a version of the truth. "We're looking for a place to stay. The room for rent is out of our budget." Tommy nodded slowly. "Mrs. Patterson's place. Yeah, she's particular about her tenants." He studied them for a long moment, and Selena prepared for the questions that would come. "Where's your husband? Why are you here? What are you running from?" But Tommy just scratched his jaw and said, "Funny thing, I heard about a property selling for almost nothing. Shack out on Old Mill Road. Been empty for years. Owners trying to get rid of it. Asking $5 last I heard." Selena blinked rain from her eyes. $5. That's what I heard. Could be the place is falling apart. Could be haunted for all I know. Tommy pulled a business card from his shirt pocket and a pen. He scribbled something on the back. "Here's the number that was on the sign. Frank Holloway. Folks call him Dutch." He handed her the card, then reached into his wallet and pulled out a $20 bill. "For the girls," he said when Selena tried to refuse. "Get them something warm to eat at the diner. Betty keeps terrible hours, but she's open now. Tell her Tommy sent you." He walked back toward his store, then paused. "Welcome to Pinehaven, ma'am. Hope you find what you're looking for." Selena sat in the rain, holding the business card in one hand and the $20 in the other, feeling something she hadn't felt in longer than she could remember. Hope. It was fragile and probably foolish. A shack selling for $5 was certainly uninhabitable. This was probably another dead end in a life made of dead ends. But as she woke her daughters and guided them toward the diner's lights, Selena allowed herself to imagine a place of their own. For walls, a door that locked. Somewhere Marcus didn't know to look. Tomorrow she would call the number. Tomorrow she would see this impossible property. Tonight, she would feed her daughters and let them sleep somewhere dry. And tomorrow, maybe, just maybe, their adventure would finally begin. $5. Cash. Today. No inspections, no questions. I got a handwritten bill of sale in the truck. You sign it, give me $5, place is yours. Selena stared at him, waiting for the catch. There was always a catch. Men like Marcus had taught her that kindness came with invoices, that generosity was just control wearing a different mask. "Why?" The word came out sharper than she intended. Dutch's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile. "I'm dying. Stage 4 lung cancer. Got maybe 3 months if I'm lucky, 6 weeks if I'm not. Property's been sitting here 20 years. Can't sell it for what it's worth because it ain't worth nothing. Can't give it away because lawyers want their cut even on garbage. Figured $5 makes it a sale, keeps it legal, gets it off my hands before I'm in the ground." He pulled an oxygen tank from the truck bed, the tubing already connected to a nasal cannula. His hands shook as he fitted it into place. "You don't want it, someone else will. But you're here now, and you look like you need it more than most." Maya tugged on Selena's sleeve. "Mama, can we see inside?" Dutch gestured toward the shack. "Doors open. Or was last time I checked. Lock broke in '09. The porch steps groaned under their weight. Selena tested each board before letting the girls follow, her mind cataloging dangers. One step had rotted completely through, leaving a gap that could swallow Sophia's small leg. She made a mental note. Fix that first before anything else. The door hung crooked on its hinges. Inside smelled of mildew, mouse droppings, and decades of neglect. But it had 4 walls. A roof, however compromised. A floor, however damaged. The main room was maybe 12 by 15 feet. A doorway led to what might have been a bedroom, another to a bathroom so small Selena could barely turn around in it. The kitchen was just a corner with a rust-stained sink and space where appliances had once stood. Water stains bloomed across the ceiling in abstract patterns. The floor sagged near the center, boards visibly rotted. Sophia wrinkled her nose. "It smells funny. Old places always smell funny," Maya said, but she'd moved to stand close to Selena, one hand gripping her mother's jacket. Dutch had followed them inside, moving slowly, conserving energy. He leaned against the doorframe, watching them explore. Roof leaks. Plumbing's shot, wells dry anyway. Electricity was shut off in 2003. Furnace died before that. No insulation to speak of. He rattled off the deficiencies like a priest reciting sins. "It's a teardown, really, but the land's yours. 1/4 acre. Zoned residential." Selena walked to the window, peered through a gap in the plywood. Douglas firs surrounded the property, their branches heavy with morning mist. No neighbors visible. No sounds except wind and birdsong. Isolated. Hidden. Safe. There's got to be something wrong with it, she said, still searching for the trap. The land. Is it contaminated? Burial ground? Flood zone? Nope. Just forgot. Pine Haven's dying. Been dying for 30 years. Mill closed in '94. Most folks left. The ones who stayed are too old or too poor to leave. Nobody wants property out here. Nobody's building, nobody's buying. Dutch's voice carried no emotion, just stating facts. You could list this for $50,000 and it'd sit empty another 20 years. He pulled a folded paper from his jacket pocket, brittle with age. A bill of sale, written in careful longhand. Blank spaces for names and date. So what do you say? Selena looked at her daughters. Sophia had found a stick and was drawing in the dust on the floor. A castle, naturally, with towers and flags. Maya stood by the broken window, looking out at the trees with that faraway expression she got when she was thinking too hard about things 8-year-olds shouldn't have to think about. This place was a disaster. It would take hundreds of dollars. She didn't have to make it barely livable. Thousands to make it safe. But it was theirs. For $5, it could be theirs. And Marcus would never think to look here. I'll take it, Selena said. Dutch nodded, unsurprised. He produced a pen, filled in his name on the seller line with shaking hands. Your name? Selena Turner. He wrote it down, added the date, the property description copied from county records. No lawyers, no title company, no inspection, just 2 signatures and $5. You got the cash? Selena pulled out her wallet, counted out 5 $1 bills. The transaction felt surreal. She'd spent more on their breakfast. Dutch took the money, folded it once, tucked it in his shirt pocket. Then he handed her the bill of sale and a pair of keys that looked older than Selena herself. It's yours. Do what you want with it. He turned to leave, then paused. One more thing. The well's dry, but Tommy Vega at the hardware store can tell you about the water truck that comes through. Fills tanks for folks out this way. And... He studied her face, something unreadable in his expression. You seem like decent people. Your girls are lucky to have you. Before Selena could respond, he was gone, his truck rumbling back down the dirt road, leaving a cloud of dust that hung in the still morning air. Selena stood in the doorway of her $5 shack, holding a handwritten bill of sale, and felt tears threaten for the first time since leaving Portland. Not tears of joy, exactly. More like relief so profound it hurt. Mama! Maya's voice was small. Are we really staying here? Yeah, baby. We're really staying. Forever. Selena thought about Marcus, probably awake by now, finding them gone. Thought about the rage that would follow, the searching, the obsessive hunt he'd mounted twice before. For as long as we need to, she said, which was the closest thing to truth she could offer. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Sophia jumped up from her dust drawing. Can I pick which room is mine? Go ahead. The girls disappeared into the back room, their voices echoing in the empty space, already arguing good-naturedly about who got which corner. Selena walked back inside, really looking now. The floorboards in the main room were particularly bad, rotted through in places, soft in others. That would need to be first priority. She couldn't have the girls falling through. Her phone buzzed. A text from a number she didn't recognize. It's Derek. Marcus is looking. Be careful. Her hands went cold. Derek, Marcus's younger brother, who'd witnessed everything but never intervened. Was this a warning or a trick? She deleted the message, then walked outside and stood in the overgrown yard. Blackberry brambles had consumed what might have once been a garden. Fireweed grew in patches. The fence leaned drunkenly. It was a disaster. It was perfect. It was theirs. Tomorrow she'd go to Tommy's hardware store, see about getting supplies on credit. Tonight they'd sleep here in their own place with a door that locked or would once she fixed the lock. For the first time in 8 years, Marcus Holloway didn't know where she was. That thought alone was worth more than $5. It was worth everything. Selena's hands were raw by the 5th day, blistered from tools she barely knew how to use. But the shack was slowly, painfully, becoming livable. Tommy Vega had proven to be more than just kind. He'd been a lifeline. When she'd walked into his hardware store that first morning, explaining she needed supplies but had almost no money, he'd studied her for a long moment before pulling out a ledger thick with dust. "Store credit," he'd said simply. "Pay me when you can. Interest-free." She'd wanted to cry. Instead, she'd thanked him and started loading her arms with the basics. Nails, a hammer, tarps for the roof, plywood to replace the worst of the damaged boards. The girls had started school. Pine Haven Elementary was small. Maybe 60 students total, kindergarten through 8th grade. Sophia had taken to it immediately, chattering every afternoon about her teacher, Mrs. Warren, and the playground with the tire swing. Maya remained guarded, sitting alone at lunch, but at least she was going. At least she was safe. Safe. That word meant something different now. Selena had met Iris Montgomery at the library on day 3. The librarian was maybe 40, with gentle eyes and gray-streaked hair pulled back in a practical bun. She'd noticed Selena browsing the home repair for beginners section and approached with quiet kindness. "New to town. Just arrived. The girl's yours." Iris had gestured to Maya and Sophia, who were huddled over a picture book in the children's section. Yes. Something in Selena's tone, or maybe something she saw in Selena's eyes, made Iris nod slowly. "We have after-school programs. Free. Homework help, art classes, snacks. If you need somewhere for them while you're getting settled." Selena had accepted, not just because it was free childcare, but because Iris hadn't asked questions, hadn't pried, had simply offered help and stepped back. That was how Selena found herself alone in the shack on a Thursday afternoon, sweating despite the October chill, prying up rotted floorboards in the main room. She'd been putting it off. The floor was the worst damage, and she'd been patching around it, fixing windows, tarping the roof, replacing the broken porch step. But winter was coming. The furnace was dead. If they were going to heat this place with the ancient wood stove she'd found in the bedroom, she needed to ensure the floor wouldn't collapse beneath them. The crowbar slipped under the 3rd board from the wall. The wood was soft, almost spongy with rot, came up with barely any resistance. Selena worked methodically, removing board after board, revealing the crawlspace beneath. She'd need to inspect the floor joists, make sure the structural support was. The crowbar punched through suddenly, breaking into a hollow space that shouldn't exist. Selena froze. She'd expected dirt, maybe some old foundation stones. Not empty space. She pulled up another board, then another. The hollow area was rectangular, deliberately constructed. A compartment hidden beneath the floor. Her heart rate kicked up. Hidden compartments meant secrets. Secrets meant trouble. But she'd come too far to stop now. Selena grabbed her flashlight, shined it down through the gap. The beam caught something reflective. Plastic. She reached down, fingers brushing smooth, wrapped bundles. She pulled one out. Money. A brick of cash, wrapped tight in plastic sheeting, bound with rubber bands that had degraded to sticky residue. She set it on the floor, reached down for another. And another. Her hands began to shake. This wasn't a coffee can full of emergency savings. This wasn't someone's nest egg. She pulled up more boards, widening the opening. The compartment stretched 6 feet long, 3 feet wide. And it was filled with bundles. Dozens. Hundreds. Selena carried one to the kitchen table, the only furniture she'd managed to salvage. With trembling fingers, she cut the plastic. Bills. $100 bills. She counted one stack, 100 bills. $10,000. Her vision blurred. She counted again. Same result. She looked at the compartment, estimated the number of bundles she could see. Did the math once, didn't believe it, did it again. Millions. This was millions of dollars. Her first instinct was to call the police. Her second was to run. Her third, the one that made her stomach turn, was to take it. But whose money was it? How long had it been here? Why was it hidden beneath the floorboards of a $5 shack? Dutch had owned this property. Dutch had sold it for nothing, had looked at her with those knowing eyes and asked if she was running from something or toward something. Dutch had known. Selena's mind raced through possibilities. Drug money, mob money, stolen money. Nothing good came in bundles hidden beneath floors. She pulled out her phone, hesitated, called up a browser, searched. Large cash found Oregon. The results were immediate. News articles from 1994. Cascade armored heist. 3 guards dead. $172 million missing. She clicked through, reading with mounting dread. An armored car ambushed on Highway 126. 3 security guards killed in the shootout. The thieves escaped with every dollar. The money was never recovered. The case went cold. 31 years ago. She searched the property records, something she should have done before buying but hadn't because she'd been desperate and stupid. The shack had been owned by Frank Holloway since 1992. Frank Holloway. Dutch. The timeline fit. The amount fit. The location, Pine Haven, was less than 40 miles from where the heist occurred. This was blood money. Money that had cost 3 people their lives. Money that Dutch had hidden here and sat on for 3 decades. Unable to spend, unable to sell until cancer gave him a deadline. And now it was hers. Or under her floor. Same difference. Selena sat at the table, one bundle of cash in front of her. $10,000 that could buy Maya new shoes without holes. Could pay for Sophia's school supplies. Could fix the shack properly. Could what? Make her a criminal? Make her complicit in a 30-year-old murder? She thought about Marcus. About his fists. About the way he'd tracked her down twice before, dragging her back each time worse than the last. About the bruises hidden under long sleeves, the carefully constructed lies to emergency room doctors. She thought about her daughters sleeping on blankets on the floor because she couldn't afford beds. About the $43 in her wallet that had to last until she found work. About winter coming and no heat and no way to fix it legally. The money sat in front of her. More money than she'd ever see in 10 lifetimes of honest work. She couldn't keep it. It was wrong. It was stolen. People had died for it. But she couldn't turn it in either. The questions would come. The investigation. Her name in newspapers. Marcus would find her within days. Selena rewrapped the bundle, carried it to the closet in the bedroom, the only closet barely big enough for a few hanging items. She placed it on the top shelf, behind a box of the girl's outgrown clothes. Just one bundle. Just in case. Just until she figured out what to do. She went back to the main room, stared down at the compartment filled with more money than she could comprehend. Her hands were still shaking. Her mind was white noise and racing thoughts and moral vertigo. She began replacing the floorboards, hiding it again, covering the evidence, burying the secret. Tomorrow she'd decide. Tomorrow she'd figure out the right thing to do. But tonight, she'd hidden $10,000 in her closet, and the weight of it felt like both salvation and damnation wrapped in rotting plastic. The girls would be home from the library program in an hour. She needed to wash her hands, needed to compose her face into something that looked like a mother who hadn't just discovered blood money beneath her floor, needed to pretend that everything was normal in their $5 shack, even though nothing would ever be normal again. 2 weeks passed like water through cupped hands, slipping away before Selena could grasp them, leaving only the residue of mounting pressure. The bundle remained in the closet, untouched, a secret that pressed against her consciousness every waking moment. She'd researched obsessively at the library, using private browsing windows and clearing her history with paranoid thoroughness. The Cascade armored heist. 3 guards dead. Michael Torres, age 34, father of 2. James Chun, age 41, engaged to be married. Patricia Knowles, age 29, 6 months pregnant. Their names haunted her. Their faces, pulled from old news articles, followed her into fitful sleep. The money under her floor had cost them their lives, and she was living on top of it, sleeping above it, walking across it every day. But she hadn't spent any. That had to count for something. Then Maya started coughing. It began as a tickle, the kind of thing that happens when autumn turns cold. But by the second week, it had settled deep in her chest. Wet and rattling, keeping her up at night. It's probably just a cold, Selena said, her hand on Maya's forehead. No fever, at least not yet. It hurts when I breathe deep, Maya said quietly. She never complained. Even now, at 8 years old, she'd learned to minimize her needs, make herself small and untroubling. That broke Selena's heart more than the coughing. A doctor's visit would cost at least $150 without insurance. Selena had $43 in her wallet. She'd spent the rest on groceries, on gas for the used space heater Tommy had sold her at cost, on the absolute necessities. She could ask Tommy for more credit. But she already owed him $340, and pride, stupid, dangerous pride, kept her from adding to that number. The bundle in the closet whispered, just one bill, just $100. For Maya's health. What kind of mother let her daughter suffer when she had the means to help? Selena lasted 2 more days. 2 days of listening to Maya cough through the night, watching her daughter struggle to catch her breath, seeing the exhaustion in her 2 old eyes. On Thursday morning, she pulled down the bundle, cut the plastic, removed a single $100 bill from the middle of the stack, where it wouldn't be noticed, rewrapped everything, put it back. Her hands shook the entire time. At the clinic in the next town over, she couldn't risk using the one in Pinehaven. Too many questions. The doctor diagnosed bronchitis. Not serious, but it needed antibiotics. The visit cost $120. The prescription another $30. Selena paid cash, received change, pocketed it with hands that felt disconnected from her body. Maya got better within 3 days. Selena told herself it was a one-time thing. An emergency. Justified. Then Sophia's shoes fell apart. Not just worn, actually disintegrated, the sole separating from the upper during recess, leaving her walking on socks. She came home crying, embarrassed, saying the other kids had laughed. $20 for cheap sneakers at the discount store. Selena pulled another bill from the bundle. Then the furnace situation became critical. The ancient wood stove worked, but barely, and winter was settling in with serious intent. Tommy quoted $1,200 for a used furnace he could install, the absolute minimum to keep them from freezing. Selena had $17 to her name. She lay awake calculating. She could find work, maybe. The diner was hiring $12 an hour plus tips. If she worked full-time after taxes, she'd make maybe $1,400 a month. Rent would be $800 if she could find anything in Pinehaven, which she couldn't. Food $200, utilities $150, gas $100. The math never worked. It never worked. Meanwhile, beneath her floor was more money than she could spend in 100 lifetimes. She took $1,200 from the bundle, paid Tommy in cash the next morning. "Your mother come through again?" he asked, counting the bills with practiced efficiency. Selena had mentioned an aunt before. Now it was her mother. The lies were getting tangled. "Yeah, she's helping where she can." Tommy's eyes held hers for a moment longer than comfortable. "That's good. Family looking out for family. That's how it should be." But something in his tone suggested he didn't quite believe her. That night, Iris invited them to dinner. Her small house on the edge of town was warm, filled with books and the smell of homemade soup. She lived alone, Iris explained. 15 years in Pinehaven, and she preferred it that way. Selena watched her with the girls, patient, kind, asking Sophia about her drawings and listening to Maya's careful, measured responses. This was what normal looked like, what safety looked like. "You're doing an amazing job with them," Iris said later, while the girls played with a box of donated toys in the living room. "Moving to a new place, starting over, takes courage. Or desperation," Selena said before she could stop herself. Iris smiled, sad and knowing. Sometimes those are the same thing. Selena wanted to tell her everything. Wanted to confess about the money, about Marcus, about the constant fear that formed a low hum beneath every moment. But the words stayed locked behind her teeth. Instead she said, "Thank you for this, for being kind to us." "Everyone deserves kindness," Iris said simply, "especially people who've known too little of it." Walking home that night, Sophia chattering about Mrs. Iris's cat and Maya quiet but less tense than usual. Selena felt the full weight of her deception. Iris was offering genuine friendship, and Selena was lying to her, using stolen money, becoming someone she didn't recognize. Back at the shack, after the girls were asleep, she checked the bundle. She'd taken $1,350 total. It barely made a dent in the stack. There were hundreds more bundles under the floor. She could take more. She could buy them real beds, winter coats. She could pay off Tommy. She could save it for emergencies, for when Marcus inevitably found them and they had to run again. The justifications came easier now, smoother, each one more reasonable than the last. It was just money. Money that was already stolen. Money that would rot under the floor if she didn't use it. She wasn't hurting anyone. She was surviving, protecting her daughters. Any mother would do the same. Selena replaced the bundle, but this time she didn't rewrap it as carefully. This time she left it more accessible, just in case. She tried to sleep but couldn't. Her mind replayed the faces of the dead guards. Michael Torres, James Chin, Patricia Knowles and her unborn child. 4 lives for $172 million. And now Selena Turner, survivor of abuse, protective mother, good person, was spending their blood money on furnaces and antibiotics and shoes. $100 at a time. She was crossing a line she'd sworn she never would. The terrible thing was how easy it was becoming. How natural. How right it felt in the moment, even as it poisoned everything it touched. Marcus Holloway stared at his phone screen, thumb hovering over the post button. The photo of Selena was 3 years old. Her face softer then, before the last time she tried to leave, before she'd learned that running only made things worse. Missing. Have you seen this woman? The post read. Selena Turner, 32, traveling with 2 young daughters. Last seen Portland area. Family desperate to find her. Reward for information. He'd crafted it carefully. Nothing about their relationship. Nothing that suggested she'd left willingly. Just a concerned family member searching for a lost loved one. The responses had started within hours. Hundreds of shares. Dozens of messages, most useless. But then, yesterday, one that made his pulse quicken. Saw someone matching this description at the Portland bus station. October 3rd, early morning. Headed east with 2 kids. East, toward the Cascades. Toward nothing. Marcus opened his laptop, pulled up a map of bus routes from Portland heading east. Small towns dotted the highway like forgotten promises. He'd work through them systematically. Someone would remember her. Someone always did. His mother had been helping, calling women's shelters with that concerned grandmother voice she did so well. Grace Holloway knew how to sound worried without sounding suspicious. But it was his younger brother Derek who'd become the problem. Derek had called 3 times in the past week, asking Marcus to let her go, as if Selena was something Marcus possessed rather than someone who'd made vows, built a life with him, owed him. She's scared of you, Derek had said during their last call. Can't you see that? Just let them go. Marcus had hung up, but he'd noticed Derek watching him differently now, following him sometimes. It was getting irritating. He posted the message to his social media, then to local community groups, lost and found pages, anything with reach. Somewhere, someone would see Selena, would remember her face, her daughters. And when they did, he'd bring his family home where they belonged. 200 miles away, Ray Torres sat in Tommy Vega's hardware store, coffee cooling in a chipped mug, listening to his old friend talk about the changing town. Not much changes anymore, Tommy was saying. Folks die, houses sit empty. We're down to 832 people now. Lost another family last month. Ray had retired to Pine Haven 6 months ago to be near his daughter and grandson. The plan had been simple. Fish, read, finally learned to relax after 25 years with the FBI. The plan was failing spectacularly. He couldn't stop thinking like an investigator. Couldn't stop seeing patterns, anomalies, things that didn't fit. Like the Cascade armored heist. His white whale. The case that had cost him his partner and 20 years of sleep. The money had never been recovered. $172 million vanished like smoke. And Ray's theory, dismissed by his superiors but never quite abandoned, was that it had stayed local. The getaway driver had been identified but never caught. Someone with local knowledge. Someone who could hide and wait. "You hear about that property sale?" Tommy asked, breaking Ray's thoughts. "Out on Old Mill Road. Dutch finally got rid of it." Ray's attention sharpened. "Dutch sold property? For $5. Can you believe that? Just wanted it gone before the cancer takes him." "Who bought it?" "Woman named Selena Turner. Showed up in town couple weeks back with 2 little girls. Didn't have nothing but the clothes on their backs, far as I could tell." Tommy refilled their coffee. "I gave her credit at the store. She's fixing the place up herself, working hard. Good woman, I think. Running from something, probably." Ray's investigator instincts hummed. "You said she arrived with nothing?" "That's right. But then..." Tommy paused, measuring his words. "Her mother sent money," she said. "Paid cash for a furnace last week. $1,200, all in hundreds." "Her mother? That's what she told me." Tommy's expression suggested his own doubts. "Thing is, she'd never mentioned family before. And the way she paid, real nervous, like the money burned her hands." Ray filed this away. A woman appearing from nowhere, buying property for $5 from Dutch, Frank Holloway, former getaway driver for hire, connected to the Cascade heist timeframe. A woman with sudden access to cash. Probably nothing. Probably a domestic situation. Woman fleeing abuse. Getting help from family she didn't want to discuss. But Ray's instincts said otherwise. "This Selena Turner," he said carefully. "You got an address?" Dutch's truck idled on the dirt road, 50 yards from the shack. From here he could see the smoke rising from the chimney. The yard, previously overgrown, showed signs of clearing. A small vegetable garden plot, prepared for spring planting. Toys on the porch. Life. After 30 years of emptiness, the property held life. He'd sold it hoping whoever bought it would never look beneath the floors. Would patch around the damaged boards, maybe eventually tear the whole structure down without discovering what lay hidden. But the smoke from the wood stove told him they were using it. And to use it safely, they'd need to repair the floor around it. Anyone with sense would pull up those rotted boards. Anyone with sense would find what he'd hidden there in 1994. The night after the heist went wrong and his partners lay dead and $172 million sat in his truck bed like a curse. Dutch lit a cigarette despite the oxygen tank, despite his oncologist's warnings. What were they going to do, kill him faster? The cancer would finish the job in weeks. He'd made his peace with dying. What kept him awake were the questions. Had she found it? Was she using it? Would she lead the police to him before the cancer gave him his exit? He needed to know. Tomorrow he'd go to the door, ask to see what repairs she'd made, offer advice about the furnace. And he'd look at the floor. If she'd found it and stayed quiet, they'd need to talk, need to establish rules. He didn't want to die in prison. But more than that, strange thought for a dying thief, he wanted the money to do some good. Wanted those little girls to have chances his own daughter never got. If she hadn't found it yet, he'd say nothing. Let fate decide. Dutch watched the smoke rise into the gray November sky and wondered if this was redemption or just another sin on his way to whatever waited after. Selena's old phone buzzed again. Derek's number. The one she'd blocked twice already. The text read, "It's Derek. Marcus is looking. Be careful." She stared at the words, paranoia spiking. Just a concerned family member searching for a lost loved one. The responses had started within hours. Hundreds of shares. Dozens of messages, most useless. But then, yesterday, one that made his pulse quicken. Saw someone matching this description at the Portland bus station. October 3rd, early morning. Headed east with 2 kids. East, toward the Cascades. Toward nothing. Marcus opened his laptop, pulled up a map of bus routes from Portland heading east. Small towns dotted the highway like forgotten promises. He'd work through them systematically. Someone would remember her. Someone always did. His mother had been helping, calling women's shelters with that concerned grandmother voice she did so well. Grace Holloway knew how to sound worried without sounding suspicious. But it was his younger brother Derek who'd become the problem. Derek had called 3 times in the past week, asking Marcus to let her go, as if Selena was something Marcus possessed rather than someone who'd made vows, built a life with him, owed him. "She's scared of you," Derek had said during their last call. "Can't you see that? Just let them go." Marcus had hung up, but he'd noticed Derek watching him differently now, following him sometimes. It was getting irritating. He posted the message to his social media, then to local community groups, lost and found pages, anything with reach. Somewhere, someone would see Selena, would remember her face, her daughters, and when they did, he'd bring his family home where they belonged. 200 miles away, Ray Torres sat in Tommy Vega's hardware store, coffee cooling in a chipped mug, listening to his old friend talk about the changing town. "Not much changes anymore," Tommy was saying. "Folks die, houses sit empty. We're down to 832 people now. Lost another family last month." Ray had retired to Pine Haven 6 months ago to be near his daughter and grandson. The plan had been simple. Fish, read, finally learned to relax after 25 years with the FBI. The plan was failing spectacularly. He couldn't stop thinking like an investigator. Couldn't stop seeing patterns, anomalies, things that didn't fit, like the Cascade armored heist, his white whale, the case that had cost him his partner and 20 years of sleep. The money had never been recovered. $172 million vanished like smoke. And Ray's theory, dismissed by his superiors but never quite abandoned, was that it had stayed local. The getaway driver had been identified but never caught. Someone with local knowledge. Someone who could hide and wait. "You hear about that property sale?" Tommy asked, breaking Ray's thoughts. "Out on Old Mill Road. Dutch finally got rid of it." Ray's attention sharpened. "Dutch sold property? For $5. Can you believe that? Just wanted it gone before the cancer takes him." "Who bought it?" "Woman named Selena Turner. Showed up in town couple weeks back with 2 little girls. Didn't have nothing but the clothes on their backs, far as I could tell." Tommy refilled their coffee. "I gave her credit at the store. She's fixing the place up herself, working hard. Good woman, I think. Running from something, probably." Ray's investigator instincts hummed. "You said she arrived with nothing?" "That's right. But then..." Tommy paused, measuring his words. "Her mother sent money," she said. "Paid cash for a furnace last week. $1,200, all in hundreds." "Her mother? That's what she told me." Tommy's expression suggested his own doubts. "Thing is, she'd never mentioned family before. And the way she paid, real nervous, like the money burned her hands." Ray filed this away. A woman appearing from nowhere, buying property for $5 from Dutch, Frank Holloway, former getaway driver for hire, connected to the Cascade heist timeframe. A woman with sudden access to cash. Probably nothing. Probably a domestic situation. Woman fleeing abuse. Getting help from family she didn't want to discuss. But Ray's instincts said otherwise. "This Selena Turner," he said carefully. "You got an address?" Dutch's truck idled on the dirt road, 50 yards from the shack. From here he could see the smoke rising from the chimney. The yard, previously overgrown, showed signs of clearing. A small vegetable garden plot, prepared for spring planting. Toys on the porch. Life. After 30 years of emptiness, the property held life. He'd sold it hoping whoever bought it would never look beneath the floors, would patch around the damaged boards, maybe eventually tear the whole structure down without discovering what lay hidden. But the smoke from the wood stove told him they were using it. And to use it safely, they'd need to repair the floor around it. Anyone with sense would pull up those rotted boards. Anyone with sense would find what he'd hidden there in 1994. The night after the heist went wrong and his partners lay dead and $172 million sat in his truck bed like a curse. Dutch lit a cigarette despite the oxygen tank, despite his oncologist's warnings. What were they going to do, kill him faster? The cancer would finish the job in weeks. He'd made his peace with dying. What kept him awake were the questions. Had she found it? Was she using it? Would she lead the police to him before the cancer gave him his exit? He needed to know. Tomorrow he'd go to the door, ask to see what repairs she'd made, offer advice about the furnace, and he'd look at the floor. If she'd found it and stayed quiet, they'd need to talk, need to establish rules. He didn't want to die in prison. But more than that strange thought for a dying thief, he wanted the money to do some good. Wanted those little girls to have chances his own daughter never got. If she hadn't found it yet, he'd say nothing. Let fate decide. Dutch watched the smoke rise into the gray November sky and wondered if this was redemption or just another sin on his way to whatever waited after. Selena's old phone buzzed again. Derek's number, the one she'd blocked twice already. The text read, "It's Derek. Marcus is looking. Be careful." She stared at the words, paranoia spiking. Ex-Dutch stood slowly, every movement painful. "I won't tell anyone. Won't come back. This conversation never happened. But if you use it, be smart. Be patient. And stay away from Ray Torres." He walked to his truck, each step measured. "Dutch," Selena called. He turned. "Why did you really come here tonight?" He was quiet for a long moment. "Because I'm dying and I wanted to know if those 3 guards died for something or for nothing. And because—" He hesitated. "Because maybe helping you is the only decent thing I'll do before I go." He drove away, taillights disappearing into darkness. Selena sat on the porch long after, the bat across her knees, her mind churning. Dutch had given her permission. Absolution, even. The money was already stolen, the crime already committed. Using it didn't make her a thief, just a survivor making impossible choices. But she knew that was a lie. Knew it even as part of her desperately wanted to believe it. Inside, her daughter slept. Outside, Marcus hunted. Beneath her feet, $172 million waited. And now she had a dying man's blessing to take it all. Ray Torres had learned patience during 25 years with the FBI. He knew how to watch without being seen, how to ask questions that didn't sound like interrogations, how to build a case one mundane detail at a time. He'd started with the diner. Betty, who'd owned it for 40 years, remembered Selena's first day in town. Came in soaking wet with those 2 little girls. Tommy Vega sent them over. Looked like drowned rats, poor things. Betty refilled his coffee without asking. Quiet woman, polite, jumpy though. Flinches when men talk too loud. Domestic abuse. Ray had seen it enough times to recognize the signs. A woman running, probably. Nothing to do with his case. Except for the money. He'd driven past the shack on Old Mill Road 3 times in the past week. Observed the improvements. New plywood on the windows, the porch reinforced, smoke rising steadily from the chimney. Work that required supplies. Supplies that cost money. Money a woman who'd arrived with nothing shouldn't have. He'd checked public records. The property sale from Frank Holloway to Selena Turner. $5. Handwritten bill of sale, no legal representation, no title company. Frank Holloway. Dutch. Ray had pulled Dutch's file from his personal archives. The boxes he'd promised his daughter he'd thrown away but had actually stored in his garage. Dutch had been on the periphery of the Cascade investigation. Known associate of one of the dead robbers. Alibis that were thin but never quite broke. He'd served time in the 90s for an unrelated armed robbery, been released in 2001, then vanished into quiet obscurity. And now he was dying of cancer and selling property for $5 to desperate women. The pieces didn't quite fit, but they were starting to form a shape. Ray? Betty's voice pulled him back. You okay? You got that look. What look? The one you used to get when you were working cases. The one you promised your daughter you'd stop getting. Ray smiled, unconvincing even to himself. Just thinking. About that Turner woman? Why would you say that? Betty gave him a look that said she wasn't born yesterday. Because you've asked about her at least 3 times this week. And because I know you, Ray Torres. You don't retire from investigating. You just stop getting paid for it. She wasn't wrong. That afternoon, Ray drove to the shack. Told himself he was just being neighborly. New people in town deserved a welcome. Selena answered the door with wariness in her eyes, the look of someone perpetually braced for impact. Mrs. Turner? I'm Ray Torres. Live over on Pine Street. Thought I'd stop by, see if you needed any help settling in. That's kind, but we're managing. Place is looking better. You've done good work. He gestured at the porch. Though I noticed that railing's still loose. Mind if I take a look? Won't take 5 minutes. She hesitated. Ray recognized the calculation. Refusing would seem suspicious, but accepting meant letting him close. All right, she said finally. Thank you. Ray pulled tools from his truck, knelt by the railing, and worked while making conversation. Where was she from? What brought her to Pine Haven? How were the girls adjusting? Selena answered carefully, each response measured. She was from Portland, needed a fresh start. The girls loved their new school. All true, Ray suspected. Also all incomplete. You know the property's history? He asked, testing a loose board. Just that Mr. Holloway owned it for a long time. Dutch. Yeah. Interesting guy. Known him for years, sort of. He mentioned why he sold it so cheap? He's dying. Wanted it settled before. She trailed off. Ray noticed her hands, raw, blistered from work. Noticed the interior through the open door, sparse but clean, new furnace visible through the doorway. Noticed the floor, fresh boards among old ones. His pulse quickened. You had to replace some flooring? Selena's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Fear, maybe, or guilt. Rotted through in places. Had to make it safe for the girls. Makes sense. Old place like this, floor's probably the first thing to go. Ray finished with the railing, stood. There. Should hold now. Thank you. What do I owe you? Nothing. Just being neighborly. He smiled. Though if you ever need help with repairs, I've got time. Retirement's boring. I appreciate that. Ray walked to his truck, waved goodbye, drove away. But 200 yards down the road, he pulled over and sat thinking. Fresh boards. Dutch's property. A woman with sudden access to cash. And the Cascade heist money, missing for 31 years, hidden somewhere within 40 miles of Pine Haven. Ray pulled out his phone, called his old partner at the bureau. I need you to run a name for me, he said. Selena Turner. And I need everything you can find on Frank Holloway's property transactions. He might be retired, but he was still an investigator. And something in that shack didn't add up. Marcus's hands tightened on the steering wheel as he stared at the gas station clerk. The kid couldn't be more than 19, acne-scarred and nervous under Marcus's focused attention. You're sure it was her? Marcus kept his voice level. Friendly. Concerned family member, not obsessed ex-boyfriend. I mean, pretty sure? 2 months ago is a long time, but yeah. Woman with 2 kids, bought snacks and asked about the restroom. Heading east, she said. The clerk pointed down Highway 126. Lots of small towns that way. Could be anywhere. Marcus pulled out $200 bills. For your help. And your discretion. The kid's eyes widened. He took the money. Back in his truck, Marcus studied the map on his phone. East from this gas station meant a dozen possible towns. But he'd work through them systematically. Show Selena's photo. Ask questions. Someone would remember her. They always did. His phone buzzed. Derek again. Marcus ignored it. His little brother had gotten soft, started talking about boundaries, and letting people go, like he'd been reading self-help books. Derek didn't understand. Couldn't understand what Selena had taken from Marcus when she left. His family, his purpose, his control. He'd get them back. He always did. Grace Holloway knelt in her kitchen, scrubbing the floor with the kind of intensity that came from guilt seeking absolution. She'd spent the morning calling women's shelters, asking if they'd seen her granddaughters, telling herself she was helping Marcus reunite his family. But last night had changed something. Marcus had come over drunk, raging about Selena, about how she'd stolen his daughters, about what he'd do when he found her. The things he'd said, the violence in his voice, the absolute absence of love or concern, just ownership and rage. Grace had seen her son clearly for the first time in years, and she was horrified. She'd enabled this. Told herself Marcus's temper was understandable, that Selena probably provoked him, that families should stay together no matter what. She'd helped him hunt down Selena twice before, delivering her granddaughters back into a home filled with fear. What kind of grandmother did that make her? Grace pulled out her phone with shaking hands. Found Derek's number. Derek? It's Mom. We need to talk. About Marcus. About what I've done. Ray Torres sat in his home office surrounded by file boxes he'd promised to throw away. The Cascade armored heist spread across his desk in photographs, reports, and obsessive notes spanning 3 decades. His former partner had come through with information on Selena Turner. Clean record. No criminal history, but also no financial history beyond the past 8 years. Like she'd appeared fully formed in Portland at age 24. And Frank Holloway's property records revealed something interesting. He'd bought the Old Mill Road property in 1992 through a shell company. 2 years before the heist, Ray had driven to the hospice where Dutch was dying. Found him in a private room, oxygen mask on, barely conscious. Dutch, it's Ray Torres. Need to ask you about the Cascade heist. Dutch's eyes had opened. Recognition flickered there along with something else. Resignation, maybe. Don't know what you're talking about. The money was never recovered. $172 million. I think you know where it went. Dutch's laugh turned into a coughing fit. When he recovered, his voice was barely a whisper. Money's gone. Lost it in a river in '95. Fish are rich now. I don't believe you. Don't care what you believe. I'll be dead in a month. You got nothing that'll stick. Dutch's eyes held Ray's. But that woman you're sniffing around? Selena Turner? She's innocent. Leave her alone. The words had confirmed Ray's suspicions more than any confession could have. Back home, Ray stared at the files. Dutch was dying. The statute of limitations on the theft itself had expired years ago, though murder charges never did. But without Dutch's testimony, without the money itself, Ray had nothing. Except Selena Turner, who'd bought Dutch's property for $5. Who'd replaced the floorboards. Who suddenly had cash. Ray's phone rang. His former partner. Ray, that name you asked me to run? Selena Turner? She just popped up on a watch list. Forger we busted in Seattle 3 days ago. His client list included a fake name that traces back to a phone number registered to Selena Turner's address. Ray's blood went cold. She bought fake IDs? Looks like. For her and 2 children. Documents were never completed. We grabbed the forger before he could deliver. When was the transaction? 5 days ago. Ray hung up, mind racing. Selena wasn't just hiding. She was planning to disappear completely, which meant she knew something was coming. Someone was coming. He needed to warn her. But about what? And how, without revealing he'd been investigating her. Selena stared at her phone, hands trembling. 3 texts from Derek in the past hour, each more urgent than the last. Marcus traced you to the highway. He's checking towns east of Portland. He's in Eugene, showing your photo. You have days, maybe less. Mom called me. She's done helping him. She told me he's 60 miles away. Selena, you need to run. Her vision blurred. 60 miles. Marcus was 60 miles away. She'd known this would happen. Known he'd find her eventually. But she'd hoped for more time. Weeks. Months. Long enough to figure out what to do about the money. About Dutch's dying blessing. About the impossible choice pressing down on her like physical weight. Now time had run out. Selena walked to the closet. Pulled down the bundle. Stared at it for a long moment. Then she began pulling up floorboards. She filled a duffel bag with bundles. $100,000, she estimated. Enough to run far and fast. Enough to buy new identities from someone more careful than the Seattle forger. Enough to disappear so completely Marcus would never find them. The girls were at the library program. She had 2 hours. She was sealing the floor back up when headlights swept across the window. Ray Torres's car. Panic seized her. She shoved the duffel bag behind the couch, tried to compose her face into something normal. Ray knocked. She opened the door. Mrs. Turner. Sorry to bother you, but I need to talk to you. It's important. Now's not a great time. It's about federal agents. They might be coming to ask you questions. About a forger in Seattle. Selena's world tilted. I don't know what you're talking about. Ray's expression was gentle but firm. I think you do, and I think you're in trouble. If you let me help. Headlights again. But these were different. Aggressive. A truck accelerating up the dirt road too fast. Selena's blood turned to ice. She knew that truck. Knew the sound of that engine. Marcus. The truck skidded to a stop in the yard. The door opened, and Marcus Holloway stepped out, his face twisted with rage and triumph. There you are, he said, his voice carrying across the cold November night. Did you really think you could hide from me? Ray stepped between them, hand moving to his hip where his service weapon used to be. Sir, I'm going to need you to calm down. Who the hell are you? Ray Torres, retired FBI, and you need to leave this property. Marcus laughed, ugly and sharp. FBI? That's perfect. You should arrest her. She kidnapped my daughters. Took them from their home. That's not what happened, Selena said, her voice shaking but firm. Girls, stay in the library room. Lock the door. She heard Maya's voice, frightened but obedient. Okay, Mama. Marcus took a step forward. Ray blocked him. Sir, final warning. Leave now or I'm calling the police. Call them. She's the criminal, not me. The sound of another vehicle. Derek's car pulling up fast. He jumped out, his face bruised, limping. Marcus, stop. Please, this has to stop. Marcus turned on his brother. You told her I was coming. You've been helping her. Because you're sick. Because this isn't love, it's obsession. Marcus lunged at Derek. Ray grabbed him and suddenly they were fighting. A tangle of bodies in the yard, Derek trying to pull Marcus off Ray, Selena screaming at them to stop. And in the chaos, Marcus crashed into the porch. His weight hit the door. It swung open. The duffel bag behind the couch tipped over. Money spilled across the floor. Bundles and bundles of $100 bills, unmistakable in the lamplight. Everyone froze. Ray stared at the money. Marcus stared at the money. Derek stared at the money. And Selena watched as every secret she'd buried came flooding into the light. Somewhere in the distance, sirens began to wail. The sirens grew louder. Maya's voice came from the locked bedroom, high and terrified. Mama! Stay there, baby. Don't come out. Ray stared at the money scattered across the floor, his investigator's mind cataloging details even as chaos swirled around him. $100 bills. Old but well-preserved. Non-sequential. Exactly what you'd expect from the Cascade heist. Marcus pushed past Derek, his rage temporarily forgotten in the face of inexplicable wealth. What the hell is this? Where did you... Get away from her! Derek grabbed his brother's arm. Marcus shoved him off. Shut up, Derek. Selena, what is this money? Did you steal it? Is this why you ran? I didn't steal anything, Selena said, but her voice carried no conviction. Her eyes were on Ray, watching him piece it together. Ray's hand moved to his phone. Protocol demanded he call it in. Federal crime. Potential evidence from an unsolved case. But his other hand stayed at his side, hesitant. The woman in front of him was terrified. Not of being caught, of something else. Someone else. Marcus took a step toward the money. Ray moved to block him. Nobody touches anything. This is a crime scene. Crime scene. Marcus's eyes narrowed. So she did steal it. I knew she was up to something. Always sneaking around, hiding things. Sir, I need you to step back. Don't tell me what to do. Those are my daughters in there, and she's apparently some kind of thief. The police car skidded into the yard, lights strobing blue and red across the scene. 2 officers emerged, hands on their weapons, taking in the chaos. The fighting men, the scattered money, Selena frozen by the door. Everyone on the ground. Now. Ray held up his hands. Ray Torres, retired FBI. I can explain. On the ground. They complied. All of them. Face down in the cold dirt while the officers secured the scene. Through it all, Selena could only think one thing. Maya and Sophia were watching this through the window. Watching their mother get handcuffed. Watching their world collapse again. And Marcus was smiling. Even face down in the dirt. Even with police guns drawn, he was smiling. Because he'd won. He always won. The money didn't matter. The police didn't matter. He'd found them. And this time, Selena had nowhere left to run. The interrogation room smelled of stale coffee and fluorescent lighting. Selena sat across from two FBI agents, her hands folded on the metal table, exhaustion pressing down on her like a physical weight. Mrs. Turner, we need you to tell us again how you came to possess $172 million in stolen currency. She'd told them 3 times already. About the shack, the rotted floorboards, the discovery, Dutch's late-night visit and his confession. What she hadn't told them was how much she'd spent. How the money had whispered justifications. How easy it had become to reach for it. Ray Torres sat in the observation room, watching through one-way glass. He'd already given his statement. How he'd suspected the money was hidden on Dutch's property, had come to warn Selena about the forger investigation, arrived just as Marcus did. He'd left out certain details, like how long he'd been watching her, like how the disturbed floorboards had confirmed his suspicions days ago. He'd protected her as much as he could. Now it was out of his hands. Marcus had been arrested for assault after attacking Ray and Derek. A restraining order was already in process. Grace had testified against her own son, her voice breaking as she described years of enabling abuse. Derek sat in the waiting room, his face bruised but resolute. He'd finally done what he should have done years ago, and Dutch had died that morning. Peacefully, they said, in his sleep, but not before leaving a handwritten letter with his lawyer to be opened upon his death. The lead agent slid it across the table to Selena now. She read it with shaking hands. To whom it may concern, I, Frank Holloway, confess to participating in the 1994 Cascade armored robbery. I acted alone in hiding the proceeds at the property on Old Mill Road. Selena Turner had no knowledge of this money prior to my death. She is innocent of any wrongdoing. This is my final statement. Frank Holloway, the agent, leaned back. Dutch's confession corroborates your story, and Agent Torres's testimony supports that you were attempting to flee an abusive situation when the money was discovered during the altercation. So what happens now? The money is seized as evidence and will be returned to the insurance company. You'll need to account for any amounts already spent. Selena's throat tightened. $1,350. For medical care, shoes, a furnace. The agent made a note. Given the circumstances and Dutch's confession, the U.S. attorney has decided not to pursue charges. You're free to go, Mrs. Turner. Free. The word felt hollow. 3 weeks later, Selena stood in the shack. Her shack, still hers despite everything. Watching Maya and Sophia play in the yard. The money was gone. The compartment beneath the floor sealed permanently. Tommy had offered her a job managing his hardware store. Minimum wage plus commission, but honest work. Iris had brought over a casserole and stayed for dinner, listening without judgment as Selena finally told the truth about everything. Ray stopped by occasionally, ostensibly to check the porch repairs, but really to make sure they were okay. Grace came for supervised visits with her granddaughters, tears in her eyes every time, trying to earn forgiveness she might never deserve. And Derek had become an unexpected ally, testifying at Marcus's trial, cutting ties with his toxic family to build something better. Selena pulled up the last of the disturbed floorboards, replacing them with new wood, covering the past, building something true. Mama, look! Sophia called, holding up a drawing of their shack, transformed in her imagination into a castle with flowers. Maya stood beside her sister, protective as always, but smiling now. Really smiling. Selena had lost $172 million, but she'd gained something worth more. Freedom, safety, a future built on honest ground. The weight of fortune, she'd learned wasn't the money itself. It was the moral burden it carried. And she was finally free of both. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.